All right, good morning everyone. It is Thursday, January the 15th, and we're looking at a storm system moving out of the northeast and another one about ready to dive into the Midwest. Now before we get there, we had some heavy snowfall in Buffalo overnight, extending to places like Toronto and Canada. And this heavy snowfall dropping anywhere from 5 to 10 inches of snowfall over western New York, into southern portions of Canada, so southern portions of Ontario, Quebec, and that's going to be wrapping up as we get into, let's say, Thursday evening, and especially by Friday morning for much of the eastern United States. Now, as we move forward in time, we can see more snowfall entering the northern plains, extending into the Midwest, the Great Lakes region, and it's very scattered, very broken in nature. So we're going to see some light snow, and from these bands of snow, maybe anywhere from 1 to as much as 3 inches where we have some lake-enhanced snowfall. But on the lighter side in general, across the Midwest as we get into, let's say, Friday evening into possibly Saturday morning. What's interesting is that as this trough begins to build into, let's say, the southeast, we can see this area of rain begin to develop. Again, just lighter showers from the Gulf of Mexico, extending northward into Tennessee and Kentucky. Now, as we move forward in time, we can see snowfall begin to develop over the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia. So places like Stanton and Harrisonburg could receive a burst of snowfall right from this event. It'd be very short-lived, may drop an inch or two in the Shenandoah Valley. But more impressive is as it moves to the north into Pennsylvania, we could see some snowfall just east of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And if you're traveling, let's say, along 78 eastward into New Jersey, where it crosses over into 287, you could see a band of moderate snowfall there, again dropping a couple of inches there. And then there's the potential for the snowfall moving northward into the Capital District as we get into Saturday afternoon. There could be a heavier band that sets up in New England from this system, but anywhere from 1 to 3 inches of snowfall could be expected through much of New England from this particular system. And one thing I want to point your attention to is that these blue lines at this time, as we get into, let's say, Saturday night, are almost vertical. It's what we would call meridional flow out of, let's say, Canada, extending into, let's say, Texas here. And when that happens, typically downstream from it, we'll have a system that develops on the southeast quadrant of this trough. Now, does it develop over the Gulf of Mexico, or does it wait to develop over, let's say, the outer banks of North Carolina? There's a couple of models showing the development of this system in that region as we get into, let's say, Sunday. And let's kind of move forward in time and see what happens to this system and its development. We can see some moderate rainfall over the Gulf, and we can see that kind of extending into places like Louisiana, maybe the panhandle of Florida as we get into, let's say, early Sunday morning. And then what's interesting is that as we move forward into mid-morning on Sunday, there's this area of heavy snowfall that develops over Georgia, and we could see light to moderate snowfall even extend into the Carolinas here, and eventually into the Hampton Roads region of Virginia. One thing that I've been watching over the last couple of runs here is that this low pressure system has been a little bit stronger, and then also tracking a little bit further to the west in each run. And what that's kind of signaling to me is that we have a system that could potentially become a nor'easter if it begins to track further and further west. And what's actually happening here and what's leading to that is that the trough itself is positioned further to the west than what was forecast a week ago. And this is allowing for not only low pressure system to be closer to the coast, but also this area of precipitation to come inland and run into that cold air that we have in place over the mid-Atlantic during the day Sunday. Now, as we move forward in time, we can see where that system continues to track northward. There's the potential for snowfall even in parts of eastern Massachusetts, especially near the Nantucket area. I think it's also important to mention that we have another Clipper system over the Great Lakes at this time, possibly dropping another 1 to 2 inches of snowfall for you guys. All right, so I do want to point out here how the system has trended to the west over time. And the jet stream itself, the very strong winds associated, let's say, to the right of the jet stream, have moved further inland. And that's going to provide energy over the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, possibly, over the weekend. So any development that does occur, this energy could play into how much precipitation we receive over the mid-Atlantic and Northeast in the case of a developing nor'easter. And once again, this is how the precipitation has trended over the last 24 hours. We can see how rain and snow has moved further inland over the Carolinas. And I've seen some runs even further recently that have shown snowfall tracking even further to the west in the European model. All right, so will temperatures be cold enough to support snow in the Carolinas? And the model is showing yes. We can see here as precipitation begins to fall and saturate the air, those temperatures do begin to cool and fall below freezing with time. And that could lead to several inches of snow in the Carolinas. And one particular model, the American model, has been showing heavy snow extending up from the Gulf states, portions of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia in this particular model run receiving 2 to 4 inches of snow. And then as you extend northward into the Carolinas, some locations receiving 6 inches of snow. So the American model has been very aggressive here in terms of snowfall over the southeast and mid-Atlantic. But if you look closely, even over portions of the Delmarva Peninsula, eastern New Jersey, even portions of New England itself, 3 to 6 inches of snowfall possible in this region if the storm were to track further to the west. Now as we move later in the month of January, we'll have more chances of cold air outbreaks and more chances of snow along with it. One thing we've had in place this winter is La Nina, and this pattern has led to the jet stream diving east of the Rockies, but only so far to the south, mainly into the northern Great Plains and into the Great Lakes, and then finally back north and east right into New England. And the storm track has been such that we've gotten these Clipper systems, right? These light snow events over the northern tier of the country. But that's about to change. We're going to see a pattern more like early December, what we saw back in 2025, right, at the beginning of December, where we had cold air outbreaks extending down to the Gulf of Mexico. And what's happening here is we have this strong ridging over the west coast, and as it does so, it's going to be pushing northward into Alaska, into some anomalously cold air. And this cold pocket of air located over Alaska and portions of the polar region are going to begin to funnel east of the Rockies with time. And it's going to follow the path of the jet stream that as it begins to rise in the west, it's going to begin to dive to the south and the east. And that's going to allow for these areas of cold air as well as chances of snowfall as we move later in the month. Now just to show you the current temperatures over the pole and northern Alaska, we have temperatures 30 to 40 degrees below zero at the moment. And you can see that extending back into Siberia. Again, Siberia this time of year, it's typical, right? 30 to 40 degrees below zero there. But this air really has been building for the last month in that region and has been confined right to the pole. Now all that's going to begin to move to the south with time as this ridge begins to build in place over the west. And all indications are that the ridge is only going to get stronger with time. And we can see that here as we move from the middle part of the month into the end of January. Where you see red is where we have ridging taking place. And where you see purple is where it's very strong, anomalously so, well above average for this time of year. And when that happens, we have this seesaw pattern, right? We have these high heights, right? These 500 millibar heights in the west, but that's going to cause us to have anomalously low heights in the east. And where you see the blue regions, that's where you're going to also see these colder outbreaks take place. And we can see in this particular map here, this model run takes us through the 22nd of January, again about a week out. And you can see these successive cold air outbreaks, and each successive one having more lasting power than the one before it. And we can see here as we get into, let's say, the 20th into the 22nd, how much of the east coast is covered in below average temperatures. And where you see the purples and the pinks, again, 10 to 20 degrees below average for the end of January. And that's going to be some really cold air that's moving in place. Now, I do want to mention over the west, we're going to have the opposite. We're going to have temperatures 10 to 20 degrees above average in these locations. So if you live, let's say, along the coast, right, in Seattle, all the way down to Los Angeles, California, you're going to be experiencing not only dry conditions associated with the ridge, but you're also going to have these above average temperatures. Now, one thing we don't fully know yet is how long that ridge is going to be in place, but all indications are that it's going to be there at least through the end of next week. Well, guys, we'll leave it at that today. We had a lot to talk about, right? We had snowfall in the Northeast during the day Thursday, another shot of snow in the Midwest, and then the potential for an East Coast snowstorm right as we get into the weekend. So you see the trend here. We have really cold in the east, really warm in the west, and that will likely be the case through the end of the month. So if you enjoyed today's video, please leave a like or subscribe. It will really help this channel grow with time. And of course, any comments you have, any questions, I'll try to get to in the next day. But until our next video, enjoy the weekend.